Welcome back to another episode of Flexible by Design. I'm your host, Ali Vogel from Flexi Studio, and today we have Rye Sullivan, who is joining us from Snappy. Rye's going to tell us a little bit more about Snappy as a company and what he's working on today. But before we jump into that, I would love, Ryan, if you can introduce yourself to our audience.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me as well, Ali. My name is Rye Sullivan. I am the Chief Product Officer at Snappy. Means that I oversee our product management, our design teams, as well as work really closely with our technology partnerships and marketing groups. What is Snappy, you might be asking? What we're trying to solve is how do we bring kind of the magic and power of gifting and recognition to the world and to helping big companies, small companies, you name it, bring that joy to, it could be their employees, it could be their customers, it could be their prospects. So you can come to Snappy, you can give us some idea of the type of person you want to send a gift to. We can then give them a bunch of options that we think are really relevant to them. Sometimes that is from our curation team who picks these gifts. Sometimes it's from our AI tool that picks these gifts. Sometimes it's you pick the gifts that you think are really great. And that way, when a person is given this opportunity to be recognized, we've kind of ensured that they're always going to find something that they love and hopefully then build that connection more deeply between the sender and the recipient.
That's such a fun company. I mean, who doesn't love receiving gifts? And me personally, I love giving gifts. It's like one of my biggest joys in life. So it's so awesome that you've been able to empower companies to do so. Especially, I saw on your website you work with larger enterprises, and this sounds really, really relevant. So before we jump into Snappy, your background is really impressive. You were VP product at Carta. You were there for a number of years. I mean, really, while Carta was growing and scaling. So tell me a little bit
Absolutely.
about your journey up until Snappy today and what made you make the decision to go from such a huge success story that is Carta to now jumping over to Snappy.
Absolutely. It's interesting when you look back, I think, on product careers, one of the things that stands out is maybe that there's a bit of like you follow your curiosity and passions over time. So I don't know, most people probably don't know this that I work within the product world, but I actually started off my career in finance and banking on Wall Street. And there was a bit of a like, okay, you're now going into product. Like that seems like such a very different thing. And it was one that it was kind of following that passion and that drive of wanting to build things and create things. So I went to a company called Clout, was kind of the first place I kind of got my product chops. For those of you who don't remember Clout, it was early in the social influencer marketing space. People used to get a Clout score and things like that. And I helped them build a business product. You know, you want to build something valuable and lovable with something that also has business value. And it was actually from Clout where it was acquired by another company called Lithium that this problem of equity ownership became really poignant because we were going through and trying to figure out like, oh, what does this mean? This acquisition, we have options. What happens to these options at this point? Are they worth something? Are they not worth something? Should I exercise them or not? When I was in business school after that, this problem kind of stuck with me. I wish people understood this world more than they do. And I wish that there was a way to kind of manage this and just have it be less confusing than it was. And it was during that time that I came across a company called Carta. Actually, it was eShares at the time.
I remember actually, I had a friend's partner at the time who was working there, and we're like, what is this company? And I mean, lo and behold, today it's such a household name.
Absolutely. And yeah, I started talking to them and they were explaining how they wanted to be the source of truth, the system of record for these private shares that exist in the world. And I was like, that makes so much sense. And at that point in time, it was really kind of the cap table product. And they were just starting to think about what if we did this thing called a 409A, which at that point I didn't even know what a 409A was, as well as, hey,
I
there's
don't know what it is. Tell our audience, what is the
what's a 409A?
409A?
Yes. So at least once a year, you need to kind of put a tax value on the shares that exist for your company. It's something that the IRS and tax authorities obviously care about. Employees care about it because this is what ends up setting the exercise price on their options. And so you go through and you get an evaluation or an analysis of based on how the company's doing and what we know about the company, this is what we think the fair market value of a share is worth. And the 409A is trying to find that fair market value for all those shares.
Very cool. So you got to eShares. you were with them through this rise in, I mean, basically taking over the entire market as we know it. Tell us a little bit more about what your journey in product was like there. What were some of the things that you were thinking about at the time, focusing? What do you think helped make the product as successful as it is today?
It's a great question. Yes, it was a wild ride and journey. When I first came in, I think that there was this question of, all right, people love the cap table product. They love knowing who owns what within a company. What are some of the other products we can build that would enhance that experience and turn this more into a product suite? And one of the nice things that we, I think, had going for us was there was a network naturally built into this world. So when a person is given like an option grant, it actually involves a lot of people to get there. The company who's giving it to them, the investors who've invested in the company care who equity is going to, board members care because you have to issue it out, and lawyers care because they're the ones who are kind of behind all the contracting of it. And so I think we had this kind of natural workflow with multiple parties coming in. And I think one of the things that we were very good at was deliberately saying, like, hey, let's go a little deeper into this network and figure out what is the product that we would invite people in with next. And so the first problem I had when I joined was, what should we do with all these investors? They've got all these shares that are now managed on this platform. And so it was thinking through, how would we build a portfolio product? What do investors care about? How do they care about giving and receiving money from their investors, their LPs, which is the kind of the beginnings of the fund administration business, which now Carta is a really big part of. And just kind of thinking through, what is it that next layer always kind of invites them in to be just a part of this network in a way that's meaningful to them and useful to them.
And something that's so fascinating that I find about you being in product at Carta is you started your career at Goldman Sachs. And from what I've seen, even from a personal anecdote, my husband also started his career at Goldman Sachs, and now he's the CEO of a fintech company. So it's a very natural progression. His whole career, he's been either in banking, in iBanking, and then in fintech. But now you've actually shifted and you're at a company in a totally different domain. At least that's what it seems like to the public eye. So tell us a little bit about your decision-making process to move to Snappy. What motivated that decision?
Another good question. I think going back to this idea of kind of following a curiosity or things that you find interesting in a moment, there were a couple things I think really attracted me to Snappy as an opportunity. One was from a product and design standpoint. You alluded to this earlier. The magical moment that Snappy provides is a really happy moment, right? Like if we do our jobs well, a person feels really good. I got a gift, but more than even receiving the gift, I felt like I was recognized and I felt like somebody else saw me in this moment. And if we do our job well, the sender feels really good. Like a person that I cared enough about to give a gift to in the first place found something that they liked. And it's this really kind of magical bringing together of the network where if we do it well, there's a smile at the end of it. We also have people who actually supply the gifts as part of our network too. They're generally happy if their gift was chosen because they end up making money. So I think that there was something very natural and human about this product that I wanted to go explore. And as much as I love Carta and what they're building, there is kind of more of a mathematical mindset. You know, the shares need to balance out at the end of the day, and the money and transactions need to, you know, kind of tie out to the final cent. And this one was much more emotional in terms of what it
Mm.
was trying to solve for. The second one is I think there's a very strong business model under it as well. And I talked before about how it's important in product to have a strong business that supports this thing that people want to do. And we saw that with these large companies going in of like, I have global workforces like that I need to make people happy. How do I do it? And I think building a system that can do that at scale and do that across borders is actually quite complex, but there is a business value underneath it. And the last one is, I think that if working at a gifting company where people are trying to make people happy, it attracts people who have a similar mindset and bent. And so I've had the opportunity to work with some really amazing colleagues who I think they bring a sense of that wonder and wanting to create magic to their job every day.
Well, that's so cool that you followed your intuition in going to a place that had not only an interesting business case and maybe an interesting product already, and you'll tell us more about how that's evolved through your time there, but that almost has a sense of purpose behind it. I think we're all kind of looking for meaningful work in our day to day. And so when we see a product that really excites us, or a domain that we might be curious in, it definitely has more of a draw than anything.
Mhm.
So, how has the product evolved in the time that you've been leading product at Snappy?
Yeah, it's evolved in a number of different ways. Some of them have been technology driven, some of them have been strategy and business driven, and some of them have also been maybe just like, oh, people really want this thing driven, which is always a nice one. I think one of the first challenges we had when I joined was it was actually kind of hard to sign up and use Snappy, which is not great, right? Like you don't want someone to come to your website and be like, how do I even get an account going? And so there was a large focus on making our product more self-serve oriented, introducing more of a product-led motion to it. And that included allowing people to sign up easily and start sending gifts and taking them out of maybe like a sales or managed process and more into a you could do it yourself if you want to. And by the way, if you do want to go through the sales process, we of course have a nice path for you to go do that. And that brought a lot of design challenges with it because many of the burdens that used to be put on people to explain, oh, this is how this works or that works, it really did fall to our product and design teams to figure out how would you make this thing really usable and intuitive. So that's been one, I think, big shift is trying to balance how do we have people who do it themselves with people that we want to help along the way. A second one is to send a gift or create this moment of happiness. You used to have to do that all on Snappy. So you used to have to go in and log into our dashboard and be like, okay, let me send it up and send it out from here. And when we talked to a lot of customers, they were like, well, I have this moment of happiness that happens in my app or in my experience. How do I bring the power of gifting something I know nothing about into my experience without kind of giving up the user journey that I've developed. And what that's turned into for us is this really nice kind of API play and partnership where we can go and allow partners to plug into our API and bring all of the logistical and emotional knowledge that we have of giving gifts and insert it into their moment of delight.
That's so interesting, and it's actually quite genius. I used to work at Microsoft, and a lot of their tools are homegrown. And so I can definitely see a very strong use case for employees not even know that they're using Snappy and just going through their internal portals, especially if you're targeting these large enterprises. How did you come up with that idea? Or how did your team come up with that concept?
Ooh, it's a good question. I think there was some part of us that looked around and we could see like it almost intuitively felt a little bit like it is weird that you always have to come here to do this thing when you're trying to do it somewhere else. And I think that there was one that we wrestled with and talked about, and it was like, well, but when it happens on Snappy, you can really control it in a way where you know you're going to get to that moment of delight. Versus if you let somebody else kind of manage it, you're giving up a little bit of control. But we ultimately netted out as we talked to customers, understood that like actually they're going to do this very responsibly. Like they're not in the business of giving people a bad time in whatever app or product they have. And so I think that was one. Another one was we listened to a lot of our customers and we listened to our go-to-market and sales teams saying like, I have this customer who's bringing this thing up a lot. And as we got our product team speaking with them and our engineering team speaking to them, we were like, that does make a lot of sense. And so we started calling it like, what if we could become the gifting layer of the internet? Like the gifting system that everybody plugs into, and we're just like the backbone of happiness across all these different sites. And we're like, that's actually like a pretty cool like mission and idea to aspire to.
That is brilliant. I love the way that you came to that conclusion. And I'm curious, what markets are you the strongest in, and what are some of your strategic plays or some areas or locales, geographies, et cetera, that you're really looking to push into?
On one hand, I think one of the nice things about gifting that people kind of know naturally is that gifting is a universal human activity. You can go to any culture at any time in the history of mankind, and you will find some concept of gift giving or reciprocation. And I think from like a kind of a business or a product or even an anthropological standpoint, that's like a fascinating thing of like, wow, gifting exists everywhere. How do you tap into that or allow people to have the flexibility to build what they would want in that moment? There are probably certain industries that I think that are maybe like a little bit clearer on like, oh, this is how this would naturally plug in. So like gaming companies, as an example, there's natural reward moments and points, and we see that they are kind of flocked to us. But actually, if you talk to almost any company, there is some moment that exists where they're like, this is like a delightful moment where I have the opportunity to build a deeper relationship with another person. And sometimes it's actually just asking companies that question of what is that moment before they kind of realize, like, oh, that's my gifting moment. And so, in some ways, we're fairly industry agnostic. In terms of geography, we're certainly more US focused than anything else, but we've been expanding internationally more specifically because some of our biggest customers, well, they have employees and customers who are overseas. And it's not really fun when you're like, yeah, I can give all my US employees a really great gift, but I can't give them to my employees in France. And so we've made sure that we've tried to create parity as much as we can across borders, which is logistically very hard to do, but we have a great marketplace team for that.
Absolutely. I'm even thinking about myself and running Flexi. We have a global team, and that is one of the biggest pain points around the holiday season, both for sending clients gifts and also gifting to our employees that literally live all around the world. And I can't say that we've done a great job with it. I think most of our solutions are kind of patchwork. We've sent things to some people and not to other people and said they get a bonus or they get cash, and it's not a great experience and it's hard. And I didn't even know the platform existed actually before I found it, and I was like, "Wow, this is great." So it's amazing that you have built something that is applicable to SMBs and
Well,
also to large enterprises. Tell me, how has the platform evolved since AI became so essential to product development?
absolutely. It's interesting. I think it's touched so many parts of our company and how we think about problems. Some of them I think are very natural and built into the product experience. So gift giving, it's one it's we can be very helpful directionally. Like if you tell us, hey, this is what I know about a person or the type of moment I'm trying to create, like it's a work anniversary for a person who loves camping and fishing. AI is actually an incredible tool for helping build an experience around that level of information. And so during last year, we said, look, we're kind of the leading gifting company in this space. Like we should have an AI assistant that can come in and help you just build an amazing experience from scratch. And so we've made sure that we've invested in making these workflows that could be difficult because if you want to create something really personalized, like, on Snappy, you can do that with the imagery that a person sees, with the text that they see, the email that they receive, the gift items and choices that they have. All of this stuff is kind of a combination of the experience for them. And rather than have that be like a series of boxes that you have to check off and be like, okay, now I did this and this. AI is actually really good at that creation part of it. And so we actually saw our funnel go from like multiple steps to essentially one step, which is like a fascinating user experience on that. Internally on our technology side, certainly it has been impactful. We have just done so much in terms of like how would we build this with an AI solution behind the scenes? How would we make it so that this thing that used to be really hard to do is now a lot easier to do? And so it's affected us at a technology level. It's also affected us in a process level too. Our PM team, as an example, has gone from this world where they used to have to write PRDs that would then inform a prototype that would then inform what was being built to, well, we can prototype super fast now. And we have designers who are like, I used to be doing pure design. Now I'm actually kind of doing like coding. I'm doing some front end development work. And I think that in many ways that technology breakthrough has just been really exciting. Then you can see people gravitating towards this like I can do things that I couldn't do before. So I don't know, AI, it's just touched lots of different places for us.
Absolutely. It reminds me a lot of when I worked at booking.com back in 2017. Booking is a marketplace, and it sounds like Snappy in a lot of ways also has a really strong marketplace element since you're working with different vendors and companies can come and choose gifts and make them personalized. And at the time, I was working in a specific office that was only focused on machine learning based personalization. And this entire office was created just for that purpose. And a lot of what we were building was very homegrown. It was all of
Mhm.
these custom models that were being built to do exactly the kind of work that you're describing, to be able to really give them this hyper personalized experience. And then on the design front, we were actually expected to put code into production, but we didn't have the right tools to do that. It was still very dev heavy. And at the time, they were building in Perl, which is a very antiquated coding language. So you can imagine a bunch of designers coding in Perl, basically so stressed out, pulling their hair out because they're like, no, maybe I broke something on the platform. And today we just see something completely different in the industry. Like you said, PMs are thinking about PRDs in a totally different way. Maybe that's the outcome of the prototype and not vice versa. And designers, you don't even necessarily need to have a background in development. You just need to know how to prompt really well and know how to give
Oh,
very specific instructions. Almost 10 years later, I'm like, I wish we had this when I was working there. Almost 10 years later, the industry has completely transformed. And you've been in the industry, for quite some time. You've done the rounds, you've seen a lot of product companies. How would you say that Snappy is really trying to lead on this innovation front? So doing things homegrown versus just leveraging the amazing tooling and APIs that we can access today?
oh, it's a really good question. And by the way, I totally agree with your your previous sentiment. When I work with our teams, I'm like, you all have such cool tools right now. You don't even understand. Like 15 years ago, none of this was here. You're living in a wild new world, and it's a cool new world too. I think that there's some amount on the homegrown front of things that you have either data about or that you've looked at this problem so much that you're like, actually, this is a thing that we should know how to do better than anybody else. And there's another part where it's like, this is actually something that we don't need to be experts in. That there's another expert out there that we can really leverage their learnings and their expertise and bring it in. And I think that there probably is a level of kind of discretion that goes with that, but also one of like almost kind of like what do you really want to own now, like what's the thing that you really are like, that's my thing. Certainly one of the other parts I'd say that our design team has really invested in heavily too has been our design system. Let's build the Legos and the blocks that we need so that when we go to pull in any of these ideas or we go to create things really quickly, we just have the toolkit available. We've also actually seen that on our brand side as well, which is we've gotten really good at defining like these are the brand parameters and voices and styles that we want to bring in so that just creation piece is really easy across the board.
Absolutely. You touched upon something that is so important, both on the brand and on the product side. One of the items that we've seen be the most in demand, which has shifted, is the need for a really strong and scalable visual system because it's actually pretty amazing what you can do today when you have those core foundations. So, just looking at it from the brand side, you can actually create really strong foundations. So you obviously have your color, your typography, your sizing, your basic layout. But if you build everything in a scalable way, you can actually create a vibe coded generator that can create all
Mhm.
of these artifacts. You basically have everything living within an environment, and it allows and gives so much power to non-technical or non-design oriented team members where you do want
Absolutely.
to stay on brand. You do want to have really, really strong assets, especially if you're going to pitch to a huge client or you're posting about something on your social media with, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of followers. So it's something that we've even seen the shift, whereas a year ago, we had to almost sell it to our existing clients. And people were kind of hesitant because they're like, oh, maybe it limits creativity. And I know some of the designers were very hesitant as well. And now it's just becoming
Yeah.
so obvious. And on the design system side, I remember we worked with this large company. They had a pretty mature design organization, but their design system was totally a mess. And literally 1 year ago at Config, I remember talking to one of the directors and I was like, hey, if we actually rebuild some of the core components of your design system, we can probably generate a lot of components with AI. I mean, we don't know exactly how to do it because it was a year ago and a year in today's days is like a decade ago. But I was like, but I think we're going to get really close really, really soon. I mean, we did it. Like it was only a matter of months before not only did it become possible, but then it became so scalable for even those that didn't necessarily know the technical aspects of it. But once you build the workflow and set everything up and have really
Mhm.
good, let's call it like documentation to be able to share that with the team, your teams just become so much more productive. So I'm curious, like, what have you seen in the last year be the most impactful for both your product and design teams?
Oh, another good question. These are all fun questions. Actually, before I answer that, I do want to address this design system one because I actually didn't also personally appreciate the importance of it until I was at Carta, and I actually had the opportunity to work with an incredible group of designers there. And designers, we actually had a few that we called design technologists because they were so savvy on the technology side as well. And they were the ones who were like these pieces that feel like they're going to constrain creativity. They're actually going to unlock it because you're not going to have to spend the time like adjusting every project to feel like it's bespoke. You're going to have this incredible universe of things that you can build with. And at that point, Carta was kind of expanding across multiple business lines. So we had this sprawling product suite that we needed to stay consistent, no matter who the user was in in the role I was playing where I was kind of overseeing the platform side of it, this became one of my like big sponsorship areas of like our design team is telling me that we need to do this. I think we need to go do this. And so as I learned more about it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so obvious. Of course we should have these as Lego pieces. So then when AI started to become more of a thing, it was like, oh my gosh, these pieces are now even more valuable than they were before. And maybe to answer your question of what's changed in the last year, I think it's probably the speed with which people can prototype is just so much faster. And I think that people are now like actually seeing, not in a theoretical level, but in a very practical level, the better component library you have, the better your mocks are going to be. And you don't have to wait like even a day for somebody to assemble it's like you wait seconds. You watch the thing build itself. And I think that that feedback loop, more than anything, probably converted some people from like skeptics of, man, that's a big investment we have to go make to, oh my gosh, we have to go make this thing because it will be so much better.
Absolutely. So, with that, how has this changed the way that you hire your team?
I think one of the things, a skill that's maybe getting a premium to it nowadays is curiosity, which I think that there's been periods of time where it's like you hire people because they have an expertise in a certain skill. But now everybody's rethinking what do the skills mean in the age of AI. And honestly, this ability to kind of wonder how would this work, to feel comfortable trying something that you don't know if it'll work, to try something and see it fail, but then be like, I'm going to go iterate on it again is really at a premium. And I think that that curiosity married with a deep sense of empathy, there may be like two of the most human emotions in the equation. People really understand human problems, and do they have the curiosity and creativity to go try stuff to get to those solutions? I actually think that's becoming one that like, maybe we look at even more heavily than we used to.
That's so interesting. I would say it's very similar to what we've been seeing. And just to add to that, one thing that I have started to value more than anything is communication skills. I mean, it's such a broad term, but I'll explain. So, to be able to communicate your ideas is now more important than ever because when you're essentially prompting, you have to be very, very specific.
Mhm.
Today, if we have a very specific prompt and we're able to maneuver and manipulate what the LLM outputs, we can really generate some incredible things to the point that we have clients now that maybe in the past we would have done some custom video work or motion work, and we've actually been able to come up with a creative concept and then give that concept to the LLM and have them output imagery that's high quality enough to put on publicly facing landing pages for consumer brands, which is something that 3, 4 years ago would have been unheard of. Like there's still a lot of refinement to do, but then what I see is the people, the humans that can communicate so well with machines, with LLMs, who can be so specific, who can sell ideas to their stakeholder, to their clients, to their colleagues. They are just a league above everyone else. And so for me, in addition to everything you've been saying, I'm like, wow, I value that more than ever now. Curious, have you seen anything similar or experienced any of those things in your team or your hiring?
I would Totally agree with what you just said. Actually, I was meeting with our web developer who manages the Snappy.com marketing site, and he went down the similar rabbit hole of understanding how to communicate and write really, really great prompts to get these incredible consumer grade images. And he actually walked me through the whole rabbit hole he went down on how does he get the outcome that he wants. And he's like, it's amazing to me how just the specificity of language is just becoming so important. The ability to really communicate an idea exactly the way you want it. And he's like, I spend a lot of time now getting better at this skill because it is helping me. There's also another part of communication internally, which is the pace of change is so fast right now that people are moving and doing things that actually just letting people know that they're doing those things and how to keep up is becoming challenging because the pace of change is just different than it used to be. And so the ability to communicate this is what we're doing and why we're changing it and how it will affect you, that's communication is just it's way faster than I've ever seen it before.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And I think going back to your point about communication, one pitfall that I've actually seen, and I'm curious because you talked about your website. So this is especially relevant for marketing teams, is the first LLM output that seemed to go completely viral and almost adopted overnight was text, right? ChatGPT came out in November of 2022. And people are like, oh my gosh, now I don't need to write my thesis from scratch. I can just copy paste it from ChatGPT. Like, there aren't plagiarism tools for that yet. Not guilty. So and now, obviously things have changed, things has evolved. We understand there's like certain cues that we can look at when we see AI generated text. But one mistake I oftentimes see marketing teams make, especially with startups that like want to run really fast, is they just start purely generating blogs from AI generators and literally copy pasting them into their marketing sites. And then they wonder why their sites are not ranking and performing. So it's interesting to kind of see that extreme as well. So how are you thinking about that in terms of your team, the way you're balancing pushing your team and encouraging them to use AI as much as possible, but then still making sure that there is this element of craft and uniqueness to things on the product side and also on the marketing side?
It is such a timely question. I think probably not just for us, but for every company out there, which is yes, there is this amazing new technology that can produce so much output and content like never before. But humans are still humans. And there's some part of us, I think, that is naturally attracted to this, like, wow, I can do more. I can be more productive. I can create things that I couldn't create. And at the same time, there's almost like a natural aversion to when you know that there wasn't a human who was crafting it, that you approach it almost with a sense of skepticism as well. The blog post is a great one. We actually continue to write our blog posts ourselves because we're like, hey, this is an important thing for us to communicate across. We certainly also see this even with gifting as well. Like, look, we could make gifting so easy, but as a recipient, if you knew that, you're like, oh, this gift was generated by a machine, it really wasn't that thoughtful. It lessens and it cheapens the experience somewhat. Versus if a person took a tremendous amount of time to pick a thing out and write a personal note and say what it meant to you. Well, that's great too. That it makes you feel really good, but you couldn't really do that at scale. So the position for AI is somewhere in that spectrum. It's not on either extreme. You can't let it do everything, and you also probably can't rely on humans to do everything either. And I think every company right now is trying to figure out like what's the appropriate amount where this technology feels helpful without feeling inhuman. And I think we're probably similar in that respect, in that we're trying to find the right balance too. And we see it maybe from the viewpoint of gifting, whereas others will see it from, whatever product or industry they happen to be in.
It's a great insight. And I think it's very industry specific to your point. Gifting is something so personal. Finance is something that holds so much weight. So if you knew your bank was only powered by AI, even though it's nice that there's some level of personalization and some level of automation, would you actually want things to be completely automated? Probably not. That's your livelihood. That's your It's your future planning. So it's something that is so relevant because going back to context, it is so contextual. You can send an automated gift and people will feel it's really generic and then it kind of defeats the whole purpose. You can automate a banking experience, but will people trust it? I mean, there's still a level of humanity that has to come between the end user and the machine because it is so sensitive. So it is very context dependent. How are you at Snappy doing that user research, making sure that you're aligned with where your customers are at? Walk me through that part of your workflow.
Ooh, it's a good one. I think have probably spent more time now talking to customers than ever before. And I think really watching them for the cues on, are we hitting that right balance? And to be fair, we also see a spectrum amongst our users of some people who are like, AI is the future. Let's go do it. This is where it's going. We have others who are like, I don't trust this thing at all yet. Like, I don't want to give it any information. And it's one that I think the more you talk to people, the better you develop a sense of where you're going to be on that spectrum. Another change that we've made that I think has been helpful for our team is now whenever we're approaching a project or a feature, in addition to the technical requirements that we have to achieve, we actually have started being very explicit of what are the emotional requirements as well. And we do this a bit of like, what is our primary emotion that we want to strike with a person? And what is the secondary one that we'd like to get, but it's not as important as the primary one? Um, and I think that that helps re-ground it in the fact that this isn't a technology science project at the end of the day. This is real people who are trying to build relationships in the real world. Just by having that reminder, it forces us to, I think, confront the complexities of the moment and really watch for those emotional cues that we have with our users.
Wow, I love that index, and it's actually one that I haven't heard before. So I'll make sure to credit you when I quote that. It's fascinating because we have so many KPIs that we measure against. And whether you're a business owner or you're running, a scaled business, there's something about that emotional connection that you have with your users, whether you're a B2C company or B2B2C or B2B that, we always say, and this is something I think people really felt during COVID, there isn't a replacement for that human connection. And that's why people, got back into apps like House Party, where everyone was, on these group calls and Zoom became so popular because people wanted to see each other's faces and they wanted to
Oh,
have some reminder of, the humanity that was out there. And so just the fact that you've integrated that into your product development process is such an important aspect, especially because you had mentioned that AI is such a big part of your workflow. So it's really great to hear that. So as we're wrapping up our episode here, what is one thing within the technology space, especially the one that you live in right now, that you are most excited about?
honestly, I would say that I love just trying stuff out. I love like opening up Claude Code and being like, what can I do with this today? And it kind of re-sparks some of those original feelings of like, oh, I can go build and be a creator. And I don't know where the world is necessarily going to take us in that direction. But I'm excited to go try it and be a part of it. And so I think the unknown is maybe the most exciting part of technology right now. I think also a lot of what we've been talking about here, this interaction between humans and the technology, is just going to become a more interesting and fascinating and multifaceted problem over time. And as someone whose career is marrying technology and helping people solve problems, I'm like, it's maybe the most exciting time we've lived in my career in this space because those things are just coming to the forefront in a really unique way.
Absolutely. So, Rai, thank you so much for joining us today on Flexible by Design. If anyone from the audience wants to be in touch with you or ask you follow-up questions or just kind of follow you in your journey, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Great question. Probably LinkedIn is maybe the best one. I've got some like Medium posts and other stuff floating around out there. That's probably not the best anything like that. So LinkedIn is probably it.
Awesome. Well, Rai, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us here in the studio. We can't wait to share this episode with all of our listeners. Anything else that you want to share with our audience today before we wrap up?
Just stay curious. It's a fun time, and I appreciate you having taken the time to speak with me on all this. It's been really fun.
Absolutely. It's been great. Thanks so much.